Good afternoon. We're ready to begin. Welcome, everyone. I am Sharon Green Middleton, Vice President of the City Council, representative for the 6th Council District, and Chairperson of the Economic and Community Development Committee. This afternoon, we will hear the following bill, 23-0380 Charter Amendment, Community Reinvestment and Reparations Funds. In attendance today and sponsor of the bill, we have President Nick Mosby.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
And also members of the committee, we have John Bullock, 9th District, Mark Conway, 4th District, Ryan Dorsey, 3rd District, and Antonio Glover, 13th District, Odette Ramos, 14th District, and Robert Stokes, 12th District. Everyone is here. And we also have Tiffany Macklin, Deputy Director for Legislation, and representative of the, and we also have Aaron DeGraff and Reed, General Counsel. And representing the Office of the Mayor, we have Tyler Chanella, Government Relations. And Bill number 23-0380, Charter Amendment, Community Reinvestment and Reparations Fund for the purpose of establishing a continuing non-lapsing community reinvestment and reparations fund to be used exclusively to support the work of the Community Reinvestment and Reparations Commission, authorizing the mayor and city council by ordinance to provide for the oversight, governance, and administration of this fund, and submitting this amendment to the qualified voters of the city for adoption or rejection. This bill was introduced on May 1st, 2023, my birthday. This bill was sponsored by Council President Nick Mosby. Comments from the sponsor. And we are basically having this session. We did have a hearing on this, and we do have an amendment that you all should, on the committee, should have a copy of. This is an amendment from the law department. Was it? Oh, I'm sorry. This is an amendment from the council president's office, and basically it's a technical kind of amendment or clarifying amendment. Are there any questions on this amendment from the committee? And I would like General Counsel to just maybe go over the amendment, and you can just do a brief synopsis to refresh our memory about the bill.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, my name is Aaron DeGraff, right, General Counsel to City Council. As Madam Vice President summarized, there was a hearing on this bill previously, and the sort of main remaining question, the purpose of the bill, as she summarized, is to create the non-lapsing fund, a charter fund, so that to manage the money from the Community Reinvestment and Reparations Commission, that commission will be able to dole out, to assign where the funds should go according to the state law. And from that first hearing, the main question was just sort of to clear up the language that this bill and this charter amendment is establishing the fund, whereas the previous language in the bill was allowing the council to take further action to create the fund. What the purpose of this exercise is this should be creating the fund, and that's what this amendment does. It creates the fund, and this will go, if the committee approves this bill and the council adopts it and it will make it onto the ballot for the voters to decide whether or not to approve this fund be included in the charter.
Thank you. Any questions from the committee?
Chair.
Councilwoman Ramos.
So just to refresh our memory, since this is a while ago we had this. So we passed the actual legislation to create the commission. We've done that already. And all of us, I think, have appointed our representatives to, or, assigned our representatives to each one.
Correct.
So what this does is just create the fund which would receive the state dollars that are coming from the reparations fund from the state. Is that, just to refresh our memories, that's what's happening?
Yes. Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, this essentially is what we would call in Annapolis, Councilwoman Ramos, a lockbox. So this ensures that the money goes into this separated account, and the money can only be spent for, what is established through state law through that commission. As opposed to when we see other funds like this, it comes into maybe the general fund. Then obviously the administration is responsible for dueling out, assigning the money. This creates a lockbox. All money in it has to go out for the purpose of what the state law, and it's easy just to track the X and the O's associated with the money coming in and where it's going out to.
Well, we also, I thought, put in the commission legislation that the commission itself would also make some determinations based on the guardrails that are put in by the state.
Totally. So
Okay.
that's what we voted on before,
Right,
that's
right.
the establishment of that commission and their duties and responsibilities.
Right, okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions from the committee?
Madam Chair, can I make a statement before you all vote?
Yes, Tyler.
Thank you. On behalf of the administration, I'd like to state that we understand the intent of this legislation, but we hold that it's not necessary. We should be mindful of the message that we send to city residents and those who do business with the city when we act as if the city cannot and does not presently manage funds in accordance with the law and any guidelines that funds come with. The Community Reinvestment and Repair Fund has very stringent reporting and usage guidelines from the state. Even if you were to align these uses with the fund, even if you were allowed the use of this fund with those of the state, the fact that there can be commingling of the funds would make it difficult to adhere to the reporting guidelines and may put us in a position to have to return funds back to the state for noncompliance. We received $641 million through the American Rescue Plan Act, through the State and Local Fiscal Recovery Fund to address the adverse impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic. We didn't set up a special fund in the charter for these monies. And creating this fund will actually slow down the process for getting these funds into the communities so that they can have the intended impact. We have already started to receive these funds. And as of today, they are sitting in a sequestered fund and ready to be used, pending the agreed upon fund structure and subsequent appropriations. These funds are not commingled and will not be used for any purposes not in accordance with the guidelines that they came with. So essentially, there is no need to create the fund that this bill is trying to create. In the case of the city of Baltimore has a sound process for managing funds that we receive from the federal and state government, and we will continue to follow generally accepted accounting guidelines. And, we do a very great job at it. We've been lauded by President Biden as a city that others need to emulate regarding our transparent spending of ARPA funds, the ARPA website, reporting dashboards, and our stellar track record on reporting to the council and the U.S. Treasury. And then, of course, like Laura's behind me, it can speak to the specifics, but this idea that we get this money in and it comes to the general fund and then the mayor can just allocate it anywhere is not true. Anytime we get money from the state or federal government, it is set into its own special fund to which it can only be used in accordance with the guidelines that the funds come with, and we follow the reporting structure as well. And we do this so that there is no commingling of funds, so that you can account for every dollar that is spent from that fund, because in the case of this fund, when we initially had the hearing on it, there was conversation around, well, it would be for the money that we receive for the state, but there would also just be here if there was ever any reparations that may come, right? This fund is being thought of as the place that the city would place that money if the state ever was to do some form of reparations. So I just wanted to provide that as information to the committee. And I want to be clear that we already have some of these funds. They're already in a fund sequestered, separate from the general fund. They cannot be used for anything other than what is stated in the state guidelines, period. That's all there is to it. Thank you.
President and sponsor of the bill would like to respond.
Thank you so much. So I want to be very clear. The intent of the bill is not to say that the administration doesn't practice prudent and responsible fiscal administration of federal or state money. That's not the purpose at all. I think it's also important to state that the motivation of the body is not to say that the administration will be ill-intended as it relates to the distribution of this money. The purpose of a lockbox and the purpose of why the council is taking this action is something that when you look at the difference between supplementing things or supplanting things. And when we see opportunities like this and we allow an administration, be it this one or one in the future, 10, 15, 20 years, to kind of have access to this money, depending on the administration's approach associated with the money, will depend on if they're deciding to supplement a really important need in our city or supplant money that's associated with a really important need of our city. By doing the lockbox and by having this own set-aside commission that is specifically focused on the purpose of providing new opportunities, new capital, new initiatives to the intention of what the state legislators decided 2 years ago in going down this path, that is the purpose. So I want to be really clear that the purpose of establishing the fund has nothing to do about the city's ability to manage money in a right way that's in accordance with state and federal law. It's more about ensuring that the equity is maximized associated with this money. The last thing I'll say is when we talk about ARPA, that I think a part of the concern around ARPA is the lack of participation, definitely from this body, but also more importantly from the community as it relates to the way the $641 million was doled out. The reason that we set up the commission is to ensure that the folks that are in the communities that have been impacted by the draconian failed practices of the past, that's the byproduct of why this ultimate reinvestment fund was created by the state, that they have a seat at the table and they ultimately decide how they want to fund the initiatives inside of their community. So I think it's really important to just separate the motivation and intent of this away from, I guess, what the administration was seeing as what the council was taking today. Thank you.
Yeah, and I understand that, but I think that in the legislation that established the commission, there is still space for this commission to, make recommendations as to how this money should be allocated and distributed to different community organizations. That's not lost on the administration, and that law is already passed. It's already a law on the books. The concern here is specifically around creating a separate fund when there's already a fund. And regardless of if the administration changes and if you get to a place where somebody may, as you said, try to supplant the money to do other things or something like that, it's still, the state guidelines still exist. So even if somebody wanted to do something other than what was laid out in the state law, they couldn't.
So again, Mr. Tyler, it's not that it's not in accordance with the rules and the regulations and the intentions of the money. Supplanting is if I'm going to build a new park and you give me money to build new parks. I had a budget of $100,000 to build new parks, and now you give me $50,000. Now I can take that $50,000 that's in my general fund and move it to repave roads. So now, as opposed to me spending $150,000 on that park, I've supplanted the money that was already intended, that was built in my budget, because now I have this $50,000 that's set aside. So that is the importance of having a lockbox to specifically target this while allowing the city to operate its general fund for the same services that we should be operating on, particularly knowing that the city was a huge variable in the equation associated with the systemic issues that this fund is intended to try to help support in the future. So I think that that's the importance of when we look at the ability of supplementing money versus supplanting money. That's the purpose behind doing a lockbox.
Okay.
Are there any other questions on that note? There is for the committee, there is a amendment that has been offered by President Mosby, and I'll read the amendment. On page 1, strikes line 18 through 20 in their entireties, and on page 2, strikes line 1 through 7 in their entireties, and substitute purpose. There is a continuing non-lapsing fund for the purposes of supporting the work of the Community Reinvestment and Reparations Commission to the extent that the work of the commission is within the scope of the use limitations in 1-322 Community Reinvestment and Repair Fund of the State Alcohol, Beverage, and Cannabis article. And on the same page, in lines 8 through 13, strike C and D respectively, and substitute B and C respectively. And I move the motion to approve the amendment. Is there a second? So moved by Councilman Glover. Chair Middleton is a yes. Bullock is a yes. Conway is a yes. Dorsey is a yes. Glover is a yes. Ramos is a yes. And we'll hold on, we're 1 second. And Stokes for the amendment? Yes. Is a yes. That's the full body for the amendment. Is there a motion to move the bill? Moved by Middleton. Second? Second by Conway. Chair Middleton, yes. Bullock? Yes. Is a yes. Conway? Yes. Is a yes. Dorsey? Yes. Is a yes. Glover? Yes. Is a yes. Ramos? Yes. Is a yes. And Stokes? Yes. Is a yes. This bill will move with the amendment at second reader at the next council meeting, and this meeting is, this voting session is adjourned.